This is NBR This Week, a look back at our leading stories. SHOESHINE this week took a look at the announced sale of the Stuff media business, which he opines rules off one of the biggest failures of management and governance SHOESHINE has ever seen. Media have speculated that current owner, Nine Entertainment, which merged with Stuff's Australian owner, Fairfax, last year, will clear 100 million Australian dollars and more from the sale, but SHOESHINE thinks they're dreaming. He thinks the Fairfax board should have sold its newspapers earlier than it did when advertising first started drying up, and paid too much, a whopping 2.7 billion Australian dollars for Rural Press, which owned a string of small-scale newspaper assets in Australia. It sold its trade me stake for less than it should have because of high debt. With revenue loss accelerating and a limit to how much more major cost-cutting it can do, SHOESHINE says Stuff is in a bind. Without a generous buyer, the group looks to be 2 years or a recession away from failure and the closure of major New Zealand metropolitan papers. In a rare use of the Companies Act, an application has been made to ban an Auckland merchant banker from running a company for at least 10 years. Prominent lawyer Stephen Franks has given notice of the application targeting John Sorensen, who has been closely involved in backdoor listings including Plus SMS and TrueScreen. The notice cites comments from Justice John Fogarty describing actions by Mr Sorensen as opportunistic, deliberate, unfair and unprincipled, and abuse of his fiduciary obligations as a director and improper. The judge's remarks were made in a judgment on long-running litigation involving Mr Sorensen and investor Michael Jacob, on whose behalf Mr Franks is seeking the banning order. Former Prime Minister Jim Bolger says now is the right time to introduce fair pay agreements to set minimum working conditions and wage rates. Mr Bolger, who chaired the Fair Pay Agreement Working Group, says industry-wide agreements in some sectors are needed to lift productivity. But Business New Zealand Chief Executive Kirk Hope, who was a member of the working group, says fair pay agreements would limit business flexibility. The former National Prime Minister believes it was right to introduce the Employment Contracts Act in 1991 to foster enterprise and individual bargaining. But he says times have changed and today is about working smarter, not harder.
But it'd be stupid to pretend that what worked and was necessary in the 1990s is identical to what you want in the 2020s. I mean, what I'm trying to get people to understand is that the world is moving faster than people's thinking, and that's a risk for New Zealand. We are a relatively isolated country, a long way from most, and if we don't move as quickly or faster than everybody else, then we're going to fall further behind.
Powerhouse Ventures is being forced to repay $500,000 to former portfolio company Hydroworks after liquidators were successful in clawing the sum back. This could have a paralysing effect on Powerhouse, whose latest quarterly results forecast high cash outflows. The liquidators identified a voidable preference claim, which is understood have been paid to Powerhouse on June 30, 2017, just 6 weeks before it sought the appointment of a liquidator to the hydro engineering firm. Deloitte liquidators David Vance and David Webb found the 16-year-old company lacked sufficient working capital, had staffing constraints, and had little in the way of its own intellectual property, despite winning major hydroelectric projects. Their latest 6-monthly report shows creditors are owed $10.2 million, and it's unlikely many unsecured claims, which make up the bulk of the debt, will be paid. A subscription service that aims to take the hassle out of queuing for your lunch has launched in Auckland and Wellington this week. MealPal, which is already in 18 cities around the world, is partnering with 100 popular eateries such as Pita Pit and Habitual Fix. Restaurants are selected by how busy they are at lunchtimes, the quality of their reviews, and ideally their proximity to big office tower blocks. Co-founder Mary Biggins says the company's focus is on making the lunches affordable.
So with MealPal in New Zealand, you'll be able to get lunch for less than $8 per day. So you'll save, 40 to 50% off of the regular retail rate. If you're ordering from an Uber Eats or a delivery service, you're probably going to be paying the full retail rate and then paying for delivery on top of that. And so it makes the price point too high for people to be using it on a daily basis. Whereas with MealPal, because the price is so low, it's really a product that a lot of people will use as a habit, and it will be the way that they're regularly getting their workday lunch.
NBR's Rawdon Christie speaks to Greg Smith of Fat Profits about the week on the markets.
Greg, let's talk about the week that was internationally.
Yeah, sure. So I think, obviously, as you mentioned, a lot of earnings beats, particularly in the tech sector. Apple was a very important result. Of course, they'd already lowered the bar earlier in the month, but Facebook was an important beat and Amazon as well. I think the theme of the earnings season in the US has generally been things aren't as bad as feared and certainly don't justify, I suppose, that excessive pessimism that was baked in the fourth quarter of last year. Also had a really good earnings beat from Boeing as well.
Looking to next week, here's a riddle for you. The more you take, the more you leave behind. What am I? So just who is SHOESHINE taking a look at? Head to our website to find out more on that and other stories, and enjoy your weekend.
To unlock your 2 free articles a week, head to nbr.co.nz.